euphorbias are all very nasty plants. The euphorbia latex is very, very poisonous. If you were to consume some of this bush, you have a very good chance of dying. If you were to get it in your eyes, you could go blind. If you were to use the wood from this bush to make a fire and you were to cook on it and the smoke tainted the meat, you could get very sick and even die from it, particularly this particular euphorbia. Funny enough, this is the desert black rhino's favorite food. They just love this bush. Some people sometimes believe that's why black rhinos are so grumpy, because they've always got tummy aches, but that's just an urban legend.
Day 2 in central Namibia, and Frank and I soaked up the scenery while driving through the red rock desert of Damaraland. It's a harsh, hot, and sometimes lonely environment, but as Frank suggests, it's still one of those magic places on Earth that hasn't yet caught up with mainstream tourism.
Gordon, it's a remote place. People tend to think of Namibia as an old German colony that's only got diamonds and desert. And that is probably why, and people don't realize what they're missing. This is probably Southern Africa's jewel.
Desert of Damaraland. My journey would take This is a remarkably foreboding ecosystem and totally unique to the planet. This is an old oil rig that's been reclaimed by the desert. It was really busy in the 70s and then presumed to be abandoned. They don't think any oil was discovered, but the Skelton Coast itself is 1,000 kilometers long. And today, we've just been so lucky because the sun's popped out, the skies are blue, and this is extremely unusual. It's usually enshrouded in mist and only happens about maybe 30 days of the whole year that you get this kind of weather. Africa is a dangerous place for shipping, even today with sophisticated navigational aids in modern vessels. One reason for this is an icy stream of water that comes directly from Antarctica and pushes with great force onto the continental mass of southern Africa. Next on Don't Forget Your Passport, I'll be moving south to the old German colonial community of Swakopmund. My guides will test their parachute skills over the Namib Desert. So hang in for more African adventure from central Namibia. We rolled into Swakopmund, Namibia in the late afternoon and set out to find a hotel, of which there are many to choose from. The offices, homes, and churches are brightly colored, and they reflect the desert and sea environment, which envelops the entire German colonial community. Old mansions and simple wooden architecture give visitors a sense of charm and warmth that's not really too easy to find in Africa. Swakopmund is the playground for Namibian residents, and the Atlantic Ocean provides some relief from the heat. It's also the backdrop for water sports and relaxing on the beach. This is a relatively small place, but its population swells when locals from the capital city of Windhoek come.
You're here to have fun. It's not like a bungee jump where you're looking over the edge and vertigo actually exists. When you're up there from 10,000 feet, the world looks flat. It's a color. Even more so here because you've got two colors, brown and blue, the sand and
Day 4, and my guides Frank Carlisle and John Vandenberg from Bejan 4x4 Adventures were about to jump tandem over the desert. Neither of these guys had parachuted before, and both were kind of anxious. Greg ran through the safety procedures at his club and did his level best to keep the guys cool under pressure.
So most people leave the plane. Right.
Just check the cypress. Computer's on. All the handles are secure. Everything's good.
John and Frank both had pre-jump nerves, but to their credit, they put on their happy faces. Remember, these South African natives are bush experts, not marine commandos. When I come back, my guides from Bejan, Frank and John, make the big plunge over the Namib Desert. After that, I'll kick around on the sand dunes with the hardcore adventure junkies from around the world. Stay tuned for more great traveling adventure on Don't Forget Your Passport. Pilot was ready to take off out into the wild blue yonder for an amazing adrenaline rush over Namibia's golden desert.
with our weight back on the board rather than on the front foot. Other differences is that you don't get cold and wet when you fall. Much softer falling. You mustn't be afraid to crash on the sand, you just have to go for it. But then the problem with the sand as well is that it doesn't melt like snow does, so I've seen a few sandy faces today.
Barren landscapes southeast of Skelton, Namibia support little vegetation, but my guide, Dov Locke, managed to notice what the San or bush people called a quiver tree.
Gordon, there's a quiver tree behind us, I guess about 200-300 years old. The name quiver tree come from the bushman who cut off a branch, and as you can see here, it's fibrous. Take this out and make a nice round area, put leather at the bottom and use